Poor Maid, who was thrown out of the house, met the billionaire president that changed her life forever. She thought he was just a kind stranger who gave her a job, but when she turned on the TV, she found out the truth. He was a billionaire, soon to be president, and the saddest part, she had already fallen in love with him. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of the Blake mansion in Beverly Hills, coating the marble floors in soft gold. But the light never seemed to touch Joy. She moved through the house like a quiet shadow, cleaning, scrubbing, dusting, seen by everyone, known by no one. The only sound that followed her was the swish of her faded skirt and the soft tap of her slippers against the shiny floor. Joy had been working for the Blakes for nearly a year. She was 22, small-framed, with dark, curly hair tied neatly in a scarf. Her mother, who lived miles away in a tiny town, was sick, and every dollar Joy earned went straight to pay for her medicine. Life wasn't easy, but Joy was grateful. She prayed every morning, whispering softly as she worked, "Lord, just one more day. Help me keep this job. Help me take care of Mama." The Blakes were rich, the kind of rich that echoed in every part of their house. Cream-colored walls, shining floors, glass tables that never seemed to stay clean for more than 5 minutes. Mrs. Ava Blake was a busy lawyer, strict, sharp, and always rushing somewhere. Her husband, Mr. Blake, was different. Too different. When Ava left for work each morning, Mr. Blake would stay home, pretending to run his online business. But Joy noticed he spent more time watching her than working. At first, she told herself it was nothing. Maybe he just noticed how clean she kept the house. Maybe it was her imagination. But then, the glances became words. "Joy," he said one afternoon, his voice smooth and strange. "You clean this place like it's your own home." Joy smiled politely. "Thank you, sir." He stepped closer. "You have a beautiful smile. You know that?" She froze. "Sir, please, that's not proper." He chuckled. "Don't pretend you don't like compliments." Joy's heart started to race. She turned and walked away quickly, whispering under her breath, "God, protect me." From that day, she avoided being alone with him. She cleaned when his wife was around. She kept her head down, her clothes modest, her words short. But the man didn't stop. Whenever Ava left the house, his voice would call again from the stairs. "Joy, my charger isn't working. Joy, come help me in the study." She began to dread those words. One Friday morning, Mrs. Blake left early for court. Joy cleaned the living room, humming quietly to herself to calm her nerves. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. Mr. Blake appeared at the doorway, holding a cup of coffee, his eyes lingering. "You don't have to work so hard," he said, smiling. "You know, you're too pretty to be just a maid." Joy's stomach tightened. "Please, sir, let me finish my work." He moved closer. "I'm serious, Joy. A girl like you deserves more. I can help you, if you let me." Her hand trembled as she held them up. "Sir, respect yourself. Don't do this." And the one the ves. We form this ve. We form the ve. We form the ve. Form the ve. He laughed quietly. "Or what? You'll tell my wife? She won't believe you." Joy took a step back, tears stinging her eyes. "You're not the man I thought you were." That afternoon, Mrs. Blake returned home. Joy was still shaken but stayed silent. She thought maybe it was over. Maybe he'd stop. But the next morning, her world ended. Joy was dusting the bookshelf when she heard Mrs. Blake shout from downstairs, "Joy, come here now." Her voice thundered through the house. Joy rushed down, heart pounding. Both of them, husband and wife, stood in the living room. Mrs. Blake's eyes burned with anger. "What is this nonsense I'm hearing?" she demanded. Joy blinked. "Ma?" Mr. Blake stepped forward, pretending to look hurt. "Ava, I didn't want to tell you. I was trying to protect her. But Joy has been behaving inappropriately." Joy's mouth fell open. "What, sir? That's not true." He sighed deeply. "She's been trying to get my attention. The looks, the comments, it's been uncomfortable." Mrs. Blake gasped and turned to Joy. "How dare you? After all I've done for you?" Joy fell to her knees. "Ma, please, he's lying. He's the one." "Shut up," Mrs. Blake shouted. "I know my husband. He would never do such a thing." Tears filled Joy's eyes. "Ma, please, I swear to God." "I said enough." Mrs. Blake turned to the guard. "Pack her things and throw her out. I don't want to see her face again." "Ma, please. My mother, she's sick. I need this job." But her words fell like stones into water heard but ignored. Mr. Blake folded his arms, a cold smirk playing at his lips. Within minutes, the guards dragged Joy to the gate. Her small bag was thrown at her feet. The gate slammed shut with a heavy clang, and just like that, she was nothing. The sky was bright, but Joy's world was dark. She stood barefoot on the sidewalk, staring at the mansion she had kept spotless for 11 long months. Her heart felt like glass shattered in too many pieces to gather again. People walked by without looking twice. To them, she was just another poor girl on the street. She tried to call her mother, but her phone battery was dead. She had only a few crumpled dollars in her purse, not enough for a bus ride, not even enough for food. By evening, her feet ached, her stomach growled, and her hope began to fade. She found an empty shop corner near Wilshire Boulevard, curled up with her bag, and cried quietly. For the first time in years, she didn't whisper her prayers out loud. She just let her tears fall, one after another, until she had none left. The night grew colder. Cars passed by, headlights flashing across her face. Some people looked, most didn't. She watched the stars through her tears. Her mind replayed everything: her mother's gentle smile, her boss's cruel words, the sound of the gate slamming. "Why me?" she whispered. "What did I do wrong?" But the stars had no answers. Around midnight, her stomach cramped from hunger. She hugged her bag tight against her chest and tried to sleep on the hard concrete floor. She dreamed of home, of her mother's voice saying, "Joy, no matter what happens, don't lose your kindness." When morning came, she woke to the sound of a car horn. Her head ached. Her throat was dry. The sun felt too bright for her tired eyes. She stood up slowly, dusting her clothes. "I'll keep walking," she whispered to herself. "Maybe I'll find something today. Maybe someone will help me." She didn't know that before the day ended, she would meet a man who would change everything. A man who had also lost everything he loved, and their broken hearts were about to find each other. The morning sun was already hot over Beverly Hills, but Joy's body felt cold inside. Her feet ached as she walked along the quiet road leading towards Sunset Avenue. Cars zoomed past, shiny and fast, like everyone had somewhere to go except her. Her clothes were dusty, her hair tangled, and her throat dry from hunger. She hadn't eaten since the previous morning. "Just a little more," she whispered to herself. "Maybe someone will let me wash plates for food." But even her voice sounded tired. As she crossed the street, her mind was lost in thought about her mother, about the lies, about how quickly life could change. Then, a loud horn blared. "Hey, watch out!" A black SUV screeched to a stop just inches from her. Joy froze, her heart jumping to her throat. The driver's door opened sharply. A tall man stepped out. He wore a simple grey shirt, jeans, and sneakers. Nothing fancy, but his presence made people look twice. "Are you okay?" he said, his voice firm but calm. Joy couldn't speak. Tears welled up in her eyes. Her lips trembled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't see the car." The man sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You could have been killed." Then, as he really looked at her, the tired eyes, the worn-out clothes, the small bag she held like treasure, his tones softened. "Hey," he said gently. "You're not okay, are you?" Joy shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. He took a slow step closer, but didn't touch her. "Please, sit down," he said, pointing to a small cafe nearby. "Let me get you water." Joy hesitated. She had learned not to trust men too easily. But something about his voice, calm, respectful, sincere, made her nod. They walked quietly into the cafe. The cafe was half empty, the smell of fresh bread filling the air. The man pulled out a chair for her and ordered bottled water and tea. "You don't have to be scared," he said softly. "My name's Eli." "Joy," she said, her voice weak but clear. "Joy," he repeated, smiling faintly. "That's a beautiful name." She gave a small, tired smile. "Not much joy in my life right now." The waiter brought the tea. Joy's hands shook as she lifted the cup. The warmth spread through her chest, calming her for the first time in days. Eli watched quietly. He didn't ask too many questions. He just waited until she was ready. Finally, she began to speak. She told him everything, the lies, the accusations, the humiliation, how she had worked hard every day only to be thrown out like trash, how her sick mother was waiting at home, and now she had nothing left. Eli didn't interrupt once. He just listened, really listened, his eyes kind and full of empathy. When she finished, she wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have said all that. You don't even know me." Eli leaned back, shaking his head. "Don't apologize," he said softly. "Sometimes you just need someone to hear you." She looked down at the table. "I have nowhere to go," she murmured. "Not even money to eat tomorrow." He hesitated, then said quietly, "I have a house not far from here. You can come with me just for tonight. It's safe. You can rest, eat, clean up." Joy's eyes widened. "No, I can't. I don't know you." Eli nodded calmly. "I understand. But look." He reached into his pocket and showed her an ID card with his name. "Eli Warren, Warren Foundation. I won't touch you or ask anything from you. You can stay in the guest house. There's an older woman there, Mrs. Helen. She'll take care of you." Joy stared at the card. His voice was gentle, but confident, the kind that didn't need to prove anything. After a long silence, she finally whispered, "Okay." Eli smiled faintly and stood up. "Come on then." The car ride was quiet. Joy sat in the back seat, watching the city blur by through the window. For the first time in days, she felt safe. She still didn't know who he was, only that something about him didn't feel dangerous. After about 20 minutes, the SUV turned into a quiet street lined with trees. At the end stood a large white house with green gardens and tall fences. Joy gasped softly. "This is your house?" Eli smiled. "One of them." Her eyes widened again, but she said nothing. He opened the door for her and called out, "Mrs. Helen." A kind-looking older woman appeared at the door, wiping her hands on an apron. "Yes, sir? This is Joy," Eli said. "Please give her food and let her rest in the guest house. She's been through a hard time." Mrs. Helen nodded gently. "Come, my dear, you're safe here." Joy followed her inside. The house smelled like lemon and clean air. She hadn't seen such beauty up close before. The glass stairs, the paintings, the calmness of the place. Mrs. Helen gave her a towel, warm food, and a soft bed in a cozy guest room. Joy took a long bath, her first in days, and cried quietly under the warm water. Not from sadness this time, but relief. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel dirty, unwanted, or scared. Later that night, after she ate and changed into clean clothes Mrs. Helen had found, she sat by the window, staring at the stars. Outside, the world was silent. Inside, she could hear her own heartbeat, steady, slow, alive. She whispered, "Thank you, whoever you are, Ellie Warren." She didn't know that the man who gave her food and shelter was no ordinary man, but one of the richest men in America, and soon to be the next president. But for now, he was just Eli the stranger in the grey shirt who had stopped to save her life. And without knowing it, her heart had already taken its first small step toward love. The next morning came softly. Golden sunlight spilled across the white curtains of the guest room, brushing Joy's face with warmth. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was. The bed was soft. The sheets smelled like roses. Then she remembered she wasn't in the Blake's house anymore. She was safe. Joy sat up slowly and whispered, "Thank you, God. He's..." She stretched her arms, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Then came a gentle knock on the door. "Come in," she said quietly. Mrs. Helen stepped in, smiling warmly. "Good morning, my dear. Did you sleep well?" Joy nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for everything." Mrs. Helen placed a tray on the table, toast, eggs, and hot tea. "Mr. Warren asked me to bring this to you. When you're done, he'd like to see you in the garden." Joy blinked. "He wants to see me?" Mrs. Helen smiled. "Don't worry. He's a good man." After breakfast, Joy washed her face, brushed her hair neatly, and stepped outside. The garden was peaceful, wide, green, full of white flowers swaying gently in the morning breeze. Eli sat by a round table near the fountain, reading something on his laptop. He looked up when he saw her. "Good morning," he said with a soft smile. "Good morning, sir," Joy replied, her voice calm but nervous. "Please," he said, closing the laptop. "No, sir. Just Eli." She nodded shyly. He studied her for a moment, the gentleness in her eyes, the honesty that didn't need makeup or fancy clothes. There was something rare about her, something pure. "I'm glad you rested," he said. "You looked like you hadn't slept in days." "I hadn't," she said quietly. "Thank you again for helping me." Eli smiled. "You don't need to thank me, but..." He paused, thoughtful. "I was actually hoping we could help each other." Joy frowned slightly. "Help each other?" He nodded. "I travel a lot, and I don't have anyone who cooks real homemade food anymore. Mrs. Helen is wonderful, but she's getting older. And honestly," he smiled faintly, "I've missed the kind of food that feels like home." Joy looked at him curiously. "I was wondering," Eli continued, "if you'd like to work here as my cook and house assistant. You'll live here, earn a fair salary, and won't have to worry about food or rent. You can even send money to your mother every month." Joy blinked, too shocked to speak. "You mean work here? In this house?" "Yes," Eli said simply, "but only if you're comfortable. I don't want you to feel pressured. You've already been through enough." Her throat tightened. She thought about sleeping on the street, about her sick mother waiting for medicine, about how kind he'd been when he didn't even know her name. Tears gathered in her eyes. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "By saying yes," Eli said gently. Joy laughed softly, wiping her tears. "Then yes, I'll do it." That afternoon, Mrs. Helen showed Joy around the house, the kitchen, the pantry, the laundry room, the guest quarters. Everything was spotless but still felt warm, not like the cold perfection of the Blakes' mansion. She began cooking that very evening rice, chicken stew, and fried plantain. When Eli came downstairs for dinner, he stopped at the doorway, surprised by the smell. "Wow," he said with a smile. "That smells incredible." Joy turned, smiling shyly. "I hope it tastes as good as it smells." It did. He ate quietly at the long dining table while she stood aside, waiting politely. When he finished, he looked up at her. "That was the best meal I've had in a long time," he said. "You cook with heart." Joy's cheeks flushed. "Thank you, Eli." He chuckled softly. "See, you said it right this time." Days passed, and the house began to feel alive again. Eli, who had once spent most days locked in his study, started coming out more often. He'd sit in the kitchen while Joy cooked, asking about her childhood, her favorite meals, her mother's health. Joy found herself laughing again, something she hadn't done in months. Sometimes, she'd catch Eli watching her quietly, not in the way Mr. Blake used to, but gently, almost protectively. One afternoon, while she was baking, he came in wearing jeans and that same grey shirt from the day they met. "You like baking?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "It helps me think," she said with a smile, "and it makes the house smell happy." He chuckled softly. "Then bake every day, please." She laughed. "You'll get tired of it." "Never," he said, smiling, and something in his tone made her heart flutter. That night, Joy sat by her window, staring out at the city lights. For the first time, her heart felt light again. She whispered softly, "Maybe good people still exist." In another room, Eli stood by his window too, looking up at the same stars. He reached into his pocket and took out a small silver chain with a locket inside, a photo of his late wife and little boy. He closed his eyes, remembering the fire, the screams, the loss. He had promised himself he'd never love again. But somehow, the quiet girl who smiled through pain had found a way to touch his heart, not with words, but with kindness. The next morning, Joy served breakfast in the garden. The air was cool, and the sunlight made everything look softer. "Sit with me," Eli said. "I shouldn't," she began, but he interrupted gently. "Please, just sit." She sat across from him, nervous. He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You've brought peace back into this house, Joy." "I didn't think that was possible." She smiled, her voice soft. "Then I guess we both needed saving." Eli smiled too, but there was sadness in his eyes. If only she knew who he really was, how powerful, how watched, how close he was to running for the highest seat in the country. But he didn't tell her, not yet, because for once, he wanted someone to see him not as Eli Warren, billionaire and future president, but simply as a man, a lonely heart rediscovering warmth. And in that quiet garden, with the sound of birds and the smell of fresh coffee, two broken souls began to heal together. The days in Eli's mansion passed like soft wind. For the first time in her life, Joy wasn't rushing, hiding, or being scolded. The house felt like peace, not just walls and windows, but safety. Every morning, she made breakfast by the garden window, and Eli would walk in wearing a clean shirt and a smile that always made her forget her worries. He treated her with kindness, always saying thank you, always asking how her mother was. Sometimes, they would talk for hours about little things, books, food, music, and dreams. And little by little, something gentle started to grow between them. Joy didn't call it love. Not yet, but every time he smiled at her, her heart skipped just enough to remind her she was alive again. It was a quiet Thursday evening. Mrs. Helen had gone to visit her sister, and the house was unusually still. Joy finished cleaning the kitchen and decided to rest for a while. She sat on the couch, holding a bowl of popcorn and an old remote. The TV hadn't worked the last few days, but tonight, it blinked to life. The news channel played loudly, showing a big crowd waving flags and cheering. Joy was about to change the channel until she heard a familiar voice, a voice she knew. She froze. Her heart thudded. On the screen stood a man behind a podium, smiling confidently as cameras flashed. He wore a navy blue suit, his hair combed neatly, but she knew that face anywhere. It was Eli, the same Eli who had saved her, the one who ate her cooking every night, the man who'd given her a job when no one else would. Joy dropped the popcorn bowl in shock. The reporter's voice filled the room. Billionaire philanthropist Eli Warren officially begins his campaign for President of the United States. Known for his generosity and leadership, Warren's foundation has helped thousands across the country. Joy's eyes widened. Her breath caught. Billionaire? President? She leaned closer to the screen. It was him. The same soft eyes, the same calm smile. But this Eli wasn't wearing jeans or a grey shirt. He wasn't sitting in her kitchen asking about her day. He was standing before thousands, waving to the crowd, a man the whole nation seemed to admire. Tears filled her eyes. She whispered to herself, "He lied to me." Her thoughts raced. He told her he ran a small foundation, not that he was one of the richest men in the country, not that he was about to become the next president. She felt dizzy. Everything suddenly made sense. The quiet security guards, the grand house, the respectful way people treated him when they visited. All of it. Joy turned off the TV and sat in silence. Her chest ached. "I trusted him," she whispered. "He treated me like I mattered, but he never told me the truth." A tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't know whether to feel angry, foolish, or heartbroken. Why had he kept it from her? Did he think she wasn't good enough to know? Did he pity her? Her hands trembled as she wiped her tears. She looked around the big, beautiful living room, the one she had cleaned with care, the one that had started to feel like home. Now it just felt like a place she didn't belong. That night, when Eli returned from a meeting, he found Joy standing by the doorway, her eyes red. He froze when he saw her face. "Joy? What's wrong?" She took a deep breath. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked softly. He frowned slightly. "Tell you what?" She lifted her chin. "That you're not just Eli. That you're Eli Warren, a billionaire. The man running for president." Eli's face fell. He stepped closer, his voice calm. "Joy, I was going to tell you. I just wanted..." She interrupted, her voice shaking. "You wanted what? To hide who you are? To let me believe you were just some kind man on the road?" He sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead. "When I met you, Joy, you were broken, scared, and tired. You didn't need another powerful man pretending to save you. You needed peace. You needed someone who could treat you like a person, not a project." Joy's voice broke. "But you lied to me!" He nodded slowly. "Yes, I did. Because for once, I wanted to be seen as me, not as a billionaire, not as a politician, just Eli, a man who's trying to heal." She blinked, confused. "Heal?" His eyes darkened with pain. "I lost my wife and my little boy 2 years ago in a fire. I haven't slept properly since that night. Everyone treats me like I'm made of gold, but I'm just a man made of ashes. Joy, when I saw you that day on the street, something in your eyes reminded me of who I used to be." Joy's tears fell again, but softer this time. She whispered, "I didn't know." He stepped closer, his voice quiet but sincere. "I didn't mean to lie to hurt you. I just wanted you to know me before you knew my world. Because in your eyes, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the man the news talks about. I just felt human." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The room was quiet, except for the ticking of the wall clock. Then, softly, Joy said, "I don't know how to feel, Eli. I don't like lies, but I can't hate you either." He smiled weakly. "I can live with that. Just don't leave, please." "Not yet." She looked at him, really looked. Behind the fame and money, she saw the same man who had stopped his car to save her life. The same man who had given her warmth, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. "I won't leave tonight," she whispered. "But I need time." He nodded slowly. "Take all the time you need." That night, as Joy lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, her heart was full of questions. Could love grow between a maid and a man who ruled empires? Could a heart that had been broken by lies ever trust again? She didn't know the answers, but one thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. And neither would his. The next few days passed like a quiet storm. Joy kept to herself, speaking little and working quietly around the house. She still cooked Eli's meals, still cleaned his study, but the laughter that once filled the air was gone. Every time their eyes met, both of them looked away. Eli didn't push her. He gave her space, though every night he wanted to knock on her door to say something that would make it right. But he knew words wouldn't fix this, only time and truth. Mrs. Helen noticed the silence too. One afternoon, she found Joy folding laundry in the guest room. "My dear," the older woman said gently, "don't let fear make you run from what could be love." Joy sighed softly. "He lied to me, Mrs. Helen." "Yes," Helen said, "but have you asked yourself why? Sometimes the heart hides not to deceive, but to protect what's fragile." Joy said nothing, but those words stayed with her all day. That evening, dark clouds rolled across the Beverly Hills sky. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain. Joy stood by the window, watching the first drops fall. Somehow, the weather felt just like her heart, heavy, unsure, full of things she couldn't say. Then, she saw movement outside. Eli was standing in the garden, rain falling hard on his shoulders. He wasn't wearing a coat or holding an umbrella. He was just standing there alone, silent, letting the rain soak him completely. Something inside her pulled. She grabbed a small umbrella and hurried outside. "Eli!" she called, running toward him. "You'll catch a cold." He turned slowly, his hair wet, his gray shirt clinging to his skin. There was sadness in his eyes, but also peace. "I needed to feel something real," he said quietly. "Everything in my world is planned, written, staged. But the rain, it doesn't fake anything." Joy stood close, her umbrella covering them both now. Water dripped down her cheeks, mixing with the tears she didn't know were falling. "Eli," she whispered, "I don't care how rich you are. I don't care about the cameras or the news. I just wanted honesty." He nodded slowly. "I know, and you deserve that." He looked down, rain gliding off his face. "When I lost my wife and son, I shut my heart completely. Then you came, a stranger with tired eyes, but the gentlest soul I've ever known. You reminded me that love doesn't always come wrapped in diamonds. Sometimes it comes barefoot and brave." Joy's chest ached. "Why did you help me that day?" He smiled faintly. "Because I saw myself in you, someone trying to survive pain that no one else could see." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "And now?" she asked softly. He took a small step closer, his voice barely above the sound of the rain. "Now, I can't imagine this house without your laughter. I can't imagine my mornings without your voice." Her heart fluttered. The rain fell harder now, drumming softly on the umbrella above them. They stood in silence for a long moment, the world around them fading until only their heartbeats remained. Then Eli said quietly, "I can't promise an easy life, Joy. The world I live in is full of noise, cameras, and judgment. But I can promise you this: I'll never lie to you again, not even to protect myself, not even to protect you." Joy's lips trembled. She looked into his eyes and saw no power, no pride, just truth. Slowly, she reached up and touched his cheek. "I forgive you," she whispered. Eli closed his eyes for a moment, as if those words had lifted a heavy weight from his soul. When he opened them again, he smiled, the kind of smile that reached his heart. "Thank you," he said softly. The umbrella slipped a little, and the rain touched their faces. They didn't move. They just stood there, drenched and quiet, two hearts finding warmth in the middle of a storm. That night, the rain stopped. The city lights reflected softly on the wet streets outside. Eli and Joy sat together in the garden, sipping tea in silence. The sky was dark, but peaceful. "I'm supposed to start my campaign tour next week," he said quietly. Joy looked at him. "That means you'll be gone?" "For a while," he nodded. "But I want you to stay here. Not as a maid. This house is your home now." Joy's eyes widened. "Eli, I can't." "You can," he said gently, "because this place hasn't felt like a home since the fire, until you came." She felt tears rise again. "You don't have to do all this for me." He smiled. "I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for us. Because you gave me something money could never buy peace." Joy looked down at her hands, blushing softly. "Then promise me something too," she said. He leaned closer. "Anything, no matter how high you climb. Don't forget the people who walk on the ground." Eli smiled warmly. "I won't, especially not the girl who taught me how to live again." The next morning, Joy woke up early to prepare breakfast. When she walked into the living room, she found a small silver pendant on the table, shaped like a dove in flight. Beside it was a note, written in Eli's handwriting. "This dove means freedom. You helped me find mine. No matter where I go, I'll carry your kindness with me. Eli." The sun rose gently over Beverly Hills, washing the white mansion in golden light. Joy stood by the kitchen window, stirring a pot of soup as soft music played in the background. The smell of baked bread filled the air, and birds sang outside. It had been weeks since Eli won the presidential election. The world called him President Eli Warren now, but to her, he would always be the kind man who once stopped his car for a crying girl on the road. Every morning, she prayed for him, and every night she whispered, "Please, God, keep him safe." But her heart ached. She missed his laughter, his quiet words, his presence in the house. That evening, as the sky turned orange and purple, Joy heard the sound of a familiar car pulling into the driveway. Her heart stopped. She wiped her hands and ran to the window. There he was, Eli. No guards, no cameras, just him dressed simply, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his smile warm and calm. Joy's eyes filled with tears as she ran outside. "Eli," she whispered. He stopped at the foot of the stairs, his eyes soft. "Joy," he said gently, "I told you I'd come home." Her voice shook. "You really did?" He nodded, stepping closer. "Because home isn't this house, it's you." Joy felt her heart melt. Before she could speak, Eli smiled faintly and said, "Come with me, there's something I've wanted to say for a long time." They walked into the garden, where everything had once begun, the same place where the rain fell and truth was born between them. The night air smelled of jasmine, and the moon glowed softly over the trees. Eli turned to her, his eyes full of tenderness. "Do you remember this place?" Joy nodded with a soft smile. "It's where I first believed you were different from every other man I knew." He took her hands in his. "And now, it's where I want to make the most important promise of my life." Joy blinked as Eli slowly knelt on one knee. Her breath caught. "Joy," he began softly, "I lost my wife and my son in a fire. I thought I would never feel love again. Then you walked into my life not because you wanted anything from me, but because you had kindness even when life gave you pain." Joy's eyes filled with tears. "You brought warmth into this house, laughter into my heart, and peace into my soul. You taught me how to live again." He opened a small box. Inside was a silver ring shaped like two doves in flight. "Joy," he whispered, "will you marry me?" Her lips trembled as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Yes, Eli, I'll marry you." Eli stood, slipped the ring onto her finger, and pulled her into his arms. Under the moonlight, they held each other close, two hearts finally at peace. A few days later, Eli kept his promise. He sent a car to bring Joy's mother to Beverly Hills. When she arrived, Joy ran into her arms, crying with joy. "Ma, you're home," she whispered. Her mother's eyes were full of wonder as she looked around the mansion. "Is this where you live now, my child?" Joy nodded through tears. "Yes, Ma. God has been good." Eli came down the stairs and greeted her warmly. "Welcome, ma'am," he said with a gentle smile. "I'm honored to finally meet the woman who raised the kindest soul I've ever known." Joy's mother smiled with tears in her eyes. and I'm thankful you saw her worth when others didn't." From that day, her mother became part of their home. She often sat in the garden, knitting and watching them laugh together. Sometimes she would whisper prayers of gratitude, saying, "God lifted my daughter from the dust and gave her wings." Eli treated her with love and respect, making sure she had everything she needed. The mansion, once silent, was now full of warmth, laughter, and family. A few weeks later, the garden bloomed again, this time with white roses, music, and joy. The wedding was small and beautiful, held beneath the same tree where Eli had proposed. Joy's mother sat in the front row, her hands trembling with happiness. Mrs. Helen stood beside her, smiling like family. Joy walked down the rose-lined path in a soft cream gown, her eyes shining. Eli waited for her in a white suit, his heart full of emotion. When she reached him, he whispered, "You look like a dream I never thought would come true." She smiled softly. "And you look like every prayer I ever prayed." They exchanged vows, and when the pastor said, "You may kiss the bride," the world seemed to hold its breath. Eli kissed her gently, and the crowd clapped and cheered. The maid, who once had nothing, had become the First Lady of the United States, a woman loved not for power, but for her heart. The next morning, newspapers across America carried the same headline, "From Maid to First Lady," the love story that captured the nation. Across town, Mrs. Ava Blake, Joy's former boss, sat at her dining table reading the paper. Her hand froze as she stared at the front page, a photo of Joy in her wedding dress, standing beside President Eli Warren. Her husband looked over her shoulder. "Is that?" She nodded slowly, whispering, "It's her, the maid we threw out." Her husband's face went pale. "The same girl you fired?" Mrs. Blake's voice shook. "The same one you lied about." Silence filled the room. Shame and regret covered their faces. The woman they once mocked and mistreated was now the most respected woman in the country. Mrs. Blake dropped the paper and whispered, "We threw her away, and God lifted her higher than us all." Months later, Joy sat in the garden, her hands resting gently on her round, growing belly. The sun was warm, and the flowers swayed softly in the breeze. Her mother sat nearby, smiling and humming as she sewed tiny baby clothes. Eli walked up quietly behind Joy and wrapped his arms around her shoulders. "How are my two hearts today?" he whispered with a smile. She giggled. "Your baby kicks every time you talk." He laughed softly. "And they already know who's boss." She turned her face up to him, eyes shining. "Can you believe this is our life?" He kissed her forehead. "Every day feels like a miracle, Joy. You're my peace, my home, my forever." Joy placed her hand over his. "And you're the proof that love can find you, even when you have nothing left." Her mother looked up from her sewing, her voice warm and gentle. "You two are living proof that God's plans are better than our pain." Eli knelt beside Joy, kissed her belly softly, and whispered, "Our story began in the rain, but it will end in light." That night, under the stars, Joy and Eli stood on the balcony, her hand on her belly, his arm around her shoulders. "I still remember the night you stopped your car for me," Joy whispered. "I thought that was the end of everything." Eli smiled softly. "And for me, it was the beginning of everything." She looked up at him. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" He nodded. "Every day, and I'll spend the rest of my life thanking God that our paths crossed." They stood there, in silence, the wind brushing past, carrying the soft scent of roses and hope. Joy's belly moved gently beneath her hand. Eli smiled, resting his hand on top of hers. "From a maid to my First Lady," he whispered, "and soon the mother of my child." Joy looked at him with tears of happiness. "We found love in the most unexpected place," he smiled. "And that's what makes it perfect." The stars glimmered above them, as if heaven itself was smiling down. And in that quiet night, surrounded by peace and love, Joy and Eli's story came full circle. A story of faith, kindness, and love that truly conquered all. The end. From maid to First Lady, a love that found its home. Sometimes, love finds us when we least expect it, not in palaces or fancy cars, but in kindness, in honesty, and in quiet moments that change everything. Joy's story reminds us that true love doesn't see status, it sees the heart. It doesn't matter where life begins for you, What matters is how love can lift you higher than you ever dreamed. Because when love is pure, it can turn pain into purpose and a simple maid into a first lady. If you believe in love that conquers all, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Love and Luxuries, where every story is proof that love is the greatest luxury of all. Joy held the pendant to her chest, tears filling her eyes. She looked out the window where the sunlight danced over the garden that still smelled of last night's rain. She smiled softly. It didn't matter what the world called him billionaire, leader, president to be. To her, he would always be the man who stood in the rain and spoke with truth. And though their paths were now different, their hearts had already promised something deeper than forever. Did you enjoy this story? Kindly let us know where you are watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for watching.